Welcome to Stoic Mindset Daily. In today's story, I want to take you on a journey that began as nothing more than a work obligation, but became something that reshaped the way I saw myself, the people around me, and the fragile balance between choices and consequences. This is not just a story about a trip. It is about vulnerability, temptation, the masks we wear in our professional lives, and the unexpected ways in which those masks can slip when we least expect it. If you've ever found yourself caught between duty and desire, loyalty and longing, you will recognize pieces of yourself in what I'm about to share. So sit with me for a while. Let me tell you how 1 week altered everything. When my boss told me I would be accompanying him on a week-long business trip, my initial reaction was a mixture of pride and nervousness. Pride, because it felt like recognition of my work, proof that he trusted me enough to represent the company by his side. Nervousness, because traveling with him meant long hours, constant focus, and the awareness that every move I made reflected on both of us. But beneath those surface emotions was something harder to admit, a quiet pull I had always felt around him. One I kept buried beneath layers of professionalism. He carried a presence that drew attention wherever he went. His voice could silence a crowded room. His smile softened tension in meetings that otherwise felt unbearable. And though I admired him from a distance, I never let myself imagine anything more. The morning we set out, the sun was only beginning to rise, painting the sky with faint streaks of gold. I slid into the passenger seat of his car, laptop bag at my feet, heart drumming faster than I wanted to admit. The road stretched ahead, long and empty, giving us hours together away from the office walls. It didn't take long before I saw a side of him I had never glimpsed at work. He told stories about his college days, about the wild mistakes of youth that shaped him, about the mentors who had pushed him harder than he thought he could endure. He teased me lightly about how serious I looked, typing on my laptop with furrowed brows, as though every email carried the weight of the world. I really laughed in a way I hadn't in weeks. That startled me, because it wasn't supposed to feel this easy, this natural. It wasn't supposed to feel personal. By the time we arrived at the hotel, my professional mask was already slipping. The resort was beautiful, the kind of place designed to calm the nerves of tired travelers. Soft golden lights, gentle music in the lobby, staff who smiled as though they had all the time in the world. Our rooms were side by side, tucked away in a quiet wing. When he insisted on carrying my bag despite my protests, brushing off my words with that easy smile, I felt something shift inside me. It was a small moment, but moments like that have a way of lingering. That first evening, after meetings that stretched into the night, he suggested we have dinner together in the hotel restaurant. It made sense to colleagues unwinding after a long day. The setting was relaxed, the food surprisingly good, the background music just loud enough to give us privacy. But across the table, as I met his eyes, something stirred in me that had nothing to do with food or conversation. He spoke with a softness I hadn't seen before, sharing the weight of his position, the loneliness of leadership, the exhaustion that came with always being the one others relied upon. I listened, realizing how rare it was to see him vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, I found myself leaning closer, drawn in. Walking back to our rooms, the hallway felt too quiet. My heart raced as I fumbled with my keycard. He paused at his door, turning to me with a smile that seemed to carry more than words. "If you need anything, you know where to find me," he said. Harmless words. But the tone, the look in his eyes, they unsettled me. I shut my door and leaned against it, pulse unsteady. Sleep would not come easily that night. I tossed and turned, replaying his words, the way his gaze had lingered at dinner, the warmth in his smile. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was imagining it. But deep down, I knew it was something more. Then came the knock. Soft, almost hesitant, but loud enough to send a jolt through me. I froze, staring at the door. Part of me wanted to ignore it, pretend I was asleep. Another part of me, the part I didn't want to acknowledge, longed to see him standing there. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. When I opened the door, he stood with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. "Couldn't sleep either," he said casually, though his eyes revealed more. That was how the first night began, not with scandal, but with 2 people sharing wine, sitting on the small couch, talking about everything except work. Yet every laugh, every glance carried an undercurrent of something unspoken. The days blurred together, each one layered with meetings and obligations by day and long conversations by night. We told each other stories we had never shared before. He spoke of regrets, of missed chances, of dreams he still carried quietly. I confessed my own doubts, my fears of not being enough, the pressure of balancing expectations. It was dangerously intimate. These exchanges. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. As though the mask I wore every day had slipped, and I was no longer hiding. I should have drawn a line. I should have reminded myself of the promises I had made to my partner back home, the trust I carried in our relationship. But instead, I found myself drifting closer night after night. A hand that lingered longer than it should. A silence charged with meaning. A smile that spoke more than words. We hadn't crossed the line yet, but we were circling it. And each night it became harder to resist. On the third evening, everything changed. Dinner stretched late into the night, conversation peeling back layers we had never exposed to anyone else. When he asked softly, "Do you ever wonder if the life you're living is really the one you want?" my chest tightened. Because the truth was yes, I had wondered many times. And with him looking at me as though he could see into the depths of my thoughts. I felt stripped bare. Back at the hotel, I opened my door and he followed. There was no excuse this time. No bottle of wine. Only silence. When he reached out and touched my cheek, the world seemed to pause. His touch was gentle, giving me space to turn away. I didn't. Instead, I leaned into it. And with that, the fragile line we had danced around finally broke. What followed wasn't reckless or wild. It was slow, deliberate, almost reverent. It wasn't only desire. It was connection, intensity, a sense of being wanted in a way that left me trembling. But even in the midst of it, guilt clawed at the edges of my mind. I thought of my partner at home, of the love we had built, of the promises I had believed unshakable. And yet, I didn't stop. I told myself it was just the trip, just the isolation, just the moment. But I knew better. When it was over, silence filled the room, heavier than any words. He held me, his hand resting lightly against mine, but neither of us spoke. I lay awake, wondering what it meant for him. Was it just loneliness? Just temptation? Or did it mean more? I didn't ask, and he didn't say. But in my heart, I knew we had stepped into something neither of us could undo. The rest of the week unfolded like a shadowed dream. By day, we wore our masks, professional, polished, unshaken. By night, we shed them. Each evening drew us closer, yet each morning I woke with guilt pressing heavier against my chest. I lived in 2 worlds, one where I was the reliable partner, the loyal employee, the person I had always believed myself to be, and another where I was someone else entirely. Someone swept away by a connection too powerful to resist. When the trip ended, reality returned with brutal speed. The drive back was quieter, filled with silences that spoke louder than conversation. At home, my partner greeted me with warmth, asking about the meetings, about how exhausting it must have been. I smiled, careful with my words, careful with my expressions. But everything felt hollow. At work, he carried himself with the same authority as always, but when our eyes met, there was something different there. A flicker of the nights we had shared, hidden beneath layers of professionalism. Sometimes his gaze lingered. Sometimes he kept his distance. But the storm between us remained, unspoken and undeniable. Nights became the hardest. Lying beside my partner, pretending everything was fine, I stared at the ceiling, haunted by memories I couldn't erase. I had never believed I could be the kind of person who strayed, who crossed lines. Yet when faced with it, I hadn't stumbled, I had surrendered. Now I carried the weight of that choice, the knowledge that once a line is crossed, nothing is ever the same. I don't know what the future holds, Maybe the memories will fade with time. Maybe I'll bury them so deep they can no longer haunt me. Or maybe they will linger, shaping every choice I make from here on. What I do know is this: some choices live within us forever, reshaping the way we see ourselves, even when no one else knows the truth. And that was the trip that changed me, not because of what happened in hotel rooms or quiet hallways, but because it forced me to face parts of myself I had never wanted to see: vulnerability, desire, betrayal, humanity in all its fragile contradictions. Once the mask slips, you can never quite put it back the same way again.